Okay, thank you for this opportunity to present this work in progress that I'm developing with Christine Schnoor, whom we heard from earlier. She talked about solo mothers in Belgium. This work is a bit related to that, but here we focus on the women in Belgium who conceive via MAR, medically assisted reproduction. We compare single and partnered women in terms of their income and proximity to parents, but as we're still waiting for the data on proximity to parents, this presentation will cover the income part of the broader research question. So since yesterday, we've been hearing about the importance of MAR and how it in part responds to the delaying of fertility, mostly of women. And we know also that there is a growing number of single women who have been wanting to be mothers on their own, often resorting to MAR. We know from Christine's presentation and from other often small-scale qualitative research that these women are in their late 30s, late 30s to early 40s. There's a mistake there. And often their story is also very much a story of postponement because they haven't found the right partner yet. We're prioritizing other career goals. We know the story. We also know that MAR is a very selective process. You have to put in a lot of time, effort, and energy into this whole process. And on top of that, it is without guaranteed success. So research has found that those who use MAR are mostly from advantaged backgrounds, even in contexts where a lot of the costs are subsidized. And as we heard from earlier also, often these treatments are provided only to married or heterosexual couples in a union. Now, there are several things that bind single women and partnered women who conceive through art. MAR, rather, the broader term. Both of them probably intended to conceive, otherwise they wouldn't go through this process. They probably put in a lot of preparation into this process, had sufficient resources to access these procedures to overcome barriers to natural conception. The primary thing that separates them is that one doesn't have a partner, and if a single woman does not know the co-parent of the child, the implication of that is she does not have a default person with whom she can share the costs of the procedure and of raising the child with. And so literature on solo mothers find that they are financially independent, they invest a lot before starting the procedure, and their investments also go into building a network of people who can support them through the procedure and in raising the child, so with family and friends. What we know less about is if the single woman who chooses to undergo these treatments knows who the co-parent is. For instance, it's a known donor, they're in some form of non-romantic co-parenting, or it is from a breakup. So this is just the question. I already mentioned that we compare single and partnered mothers in terms of their personal income. Further information on the Belgian context, there is partial reimbursement of MAR costs until age 43, so until before the 43rd birthday, if I'm not mistaken, for up to 6 cycles. And the reimbursement is quite good. It covers about 80% of the costs of each cycle, according to one fertility clinic. But beyond that, MAR treatments are legally allowed until age 47, or rather until before your 48th birthday. Single women are also allowed access to MAR treatments, but fertility clinics are given the permission to set their own selection criteria. And so single women may either go through the sperm banks, and if they go through this route, the donor would for sure be anonymous, or they can bring in a known sperm donor to the clinic. In this case, she would know who the father of the child will be. So just some quick theoretical considerations. We consider income as a financial resource, and we suppose that in a heteronormative couple, where the male will be the primary breadwinner, the woman may earn less than the man. There are several theories that support this. For instance, Becker's economic view of the family suggests that in a couple, one person specializes in housework while the other specializes in market work to be more efficient, and often we know who specializes in what. There are also proponents of what they call the stalled gender revolution, who say that despite the greater involvement of women in the labor market and the higher education of women, men are not as equal in terms of contributing to housework, and thus these perpetuate traditional gender roles. So what this means then for a single woman wanting to have a child alone is that she would at least need the income of two people if she wants to undergo this process. And we also look at the co-parent declaration and what it means for single women. We suppose that a co-parent is a source of social resources, and that the fact that the woman identifies a co-parent for the child suggests that this other person is in some way or another going to be involved in the mother's life, much so the child's life. And both the linked lives perspective and the social capital theory emphasize that our social links are important in augmenting our own resources. Thus, the claim is then that single women with a declared co-parent at least have the possibility to rely on the other person for financial and child-rearing support. So we have two main hypotheses for income. It's that single mothers without a declared co-parent will have higher pre-birth income compared to partnered mothers, and that those with a declared co-parent would probably have similar pre-birth income, as the first one would need this compensation mechanism and the other less so. We use data from Belgian birth records from 2010 to 2019, and we link it to tax declarations. In a later step, we link it also to register data. Our sample includes women in Belgium who delivered a first child conceived via MAR, so that includes hormonal treatments, IVF, and ICSI. For the independent variable, we use personal income 2 years before the birth, and we distinguish between the different types of MAR mother, those with a declared co-parent, without, and compare it with partner. We also have several controls, the age, education, and place of birth of the mother, and we use logistic regression. Now, just going through quickly through some descriptives, we find that most of these women are partnered, no surprise. 5% are single without a co-parent, 4% are single with a co-parent. As Christine showed earlier, the single with no co-parent are indeed older than the rest of these mothers, also more highly educated, and a larger proportion born in Belgium. This is just the descriptive distribution of the income. We find that those who are single without a co-parent, their incomes are heaped more in the higher ranges, whereas those who are single with a co-parent are more in the lower ranges, or what I refer to here as the average income, because these ranges are where the individual annual income of Belgians fall within the study period. Now, I don't have a lot of multivariate results to show, so it's going to be quick. But first, we find a positive relationship between income and being a single mother without a co-parent compared to being a partnered mother. And these are relative risk ratios. I'm showing 3 models here, because we did a stepwise approach to the modeling, just to show that the associations we found remain robust even after adding controls. Now, it's a bit more complicated for the single mothers with a co-parent. We find a negative relation between income and being a single mother with a co-parent, but not for the highest income group. So putting it like this in a plot with average marginal effects probably clarifies things and makes it more clear, easier to understand. Again, we see that purple line, positive purple line, again reinforcing that there is that higher income is linked to being a single MAR mother without a co-parent, or at least having above average income, these ranges. And for the single mothers with a co-parent, we find that very low income increases the likelihood of being in this mother category compared to being partnered, but also, though very, very slightly, having high income, or at least the one in the those in the highest income range. So just some reflections to close. We find support for the first hypothesis that indeed high income is associated with being a single mother without a declared co-parent compared to partnered. And this very much fits in with what other research has found on solo mothers in smaller scale studies. So this also reinforces our hypothesis that high income is a compensation mechanism because of the lack of a second person to support you through the process and to raise the child. Or this might very well reflect strict selection in fertility clinics. Now, we have yet to discuss more with fertility centers, but with the little information we know that, of course, there are psychologists that screen the single women who want to be single mothers, and a lot of the time they look into the SES background of these women, looking at what they studied in school, how much they're earning, how the family and friends are going to be involved in the raising of the child, and in some instances, it's really selective. And for the second result, we find only partial support for the claim that those with a co-parent will have kind of similar income with partnered mothers. In general, we see that it is very low and a bit also high income that is associated with being a single mother with co-parent compared to being partnered. And this reflects probably the heterogeneity of this group. The low-income single mothers in this category might be relying on a co-parent at least 2 years before because we took a lagged variable for the income. It might reflect a recent separation, or it might also be other types of solo mothers who know their donor, who is co-parenting with a friend in a non-romantic way, things like this. So the first further step is then to explore this heterogeneous category, and in a later step, when the data comes, we will incorporate variables on proximity to women's parents, possibly interacting that with income, interested in the social aspect of that as a non-economic resource. There's already some studies that find that the parents of single mothers are very useful for them in raising the child, and they act as these authors say, replacement partners or replacement parents. And so that is it. Thank you.